This is Nico. This is also Nico, and this year is the 15th year celebration of his pro model.
Yep, I'm Nico. It's been a journey, and I'm so grateful I've been able to share my passion of the sport with so many other people through my wakeboard, the Peak. Throughout the years, the board has seen a lot of change, a lot of growth, a lot of development, as have I. I guess on some level, its development has always been a parallel to my life. Well, let's have a look at how this all started. It's funny, that's the actual original little piece of paper. I remember sitting there at this boarding school room I was in, writing these names down. Count, Bounce, Reflex, Apex was a name, Tune, and Peak. I came from the southernmost region in Germany where there's a lot of mountains, so I was always surrounded by peaks. And also, looking at life like that, like you want to strive towards a peak. And then at the same time, especially, like hiking mountains, you realize it's not only about being on top. The journey up there is the mission is what makes it so fun. And that's kind of what this name of the board reminds me of every single time I strap in. 2012 was a really cool year for me. I had kind of, had my breakthrough onto the wakeboard circus internationally the year before. I had won Wake the Line, I had won Wake of Fame. I was on podiums around the world. And then in the second year, 2012, I also picked up a few more sponsors. I was riding for Monster Energy back then, had Nike 6.0, and I was like, okay, so what can I do to keep on investing, in myself really, and created Chi with Nico, where I paid a filmer monthly to create videos with me. And looking back at it, it was definitely a really cool decision that I tried to take a bet on myself that year. Year 2 was the first time I drew the graphic, and it was cool because back then it was Scott Leverett, the graphic designer at Liquid Force, and I showed him a few things that I had drawn at home, like not for the board, just like any kind of drawings, and he was like, hey, why don't you give it a go? And yeah, this is what I came up with. That was my first, self-created board, and then Tarek, he took it from there and added all, the colors and graphics to it to make it a proper wakeboard. Maybe I didn't realize in that year yet, but creating my own artwork for my own pro model, from that first year on, like the years that would follow, it was always this really cool challenge for myself, who I would not identify as, an artist, but to bring out the artist side of me and work on that craft a little bit, to where it was, maybe just good enough to make a nice wakeboard.
It is by no means a given, however, that your creative influence over the sport, both on and off the water, will shape its future for decades. Unless, that is, you're Nico.
Yeah, the debut. We started filming that end of 2012. 2013 was the main year of filming. It was released spring 2014, but in that film, I was riding the Peace, Love, and Happiness Peak. And I think what we created there was really, looking back at it, an iconic board. And what made it even more special, a bunch of other riders were on that board. Raph Jerome was riding it, Daniel Grant was riding it. There's also the year when, the board really came a wake park classic that a lot of people, were drawn to.
The fact that you had pro riders on the Liquid Force team who had pro models and yet were reverting to the Peak because it was just so good, at its designated time. that says something.
I think it was pretty exciting for all of us to see what you had created, and you're probably the only rider that has created all of his boards, and definitely, gave it a special touch. And also, we got to know you through your board graphics, which is something pretty unique. That year, 2013, the Peak, the best board available. Honestly, I don't think I've ever found a board that could repeat that. I don't think my board was as good as that ever.
I think the Peak is one of the most iconic boards from LF.
I guess doing my first probably 1080 on it, to winning my first world title, to winching the first spot.
The graphic itself was so cool that I didn't even care how the board rode. I was just I'm going with this one 100%. I actually had the limited edition white and purple peace sign Peak, and it was sick, yeah.
I loved it so much, and I learned a lot of tricks on this board. And it really gave me a good foundation of what I would maybe want in a board.
The fact that Nico and Jimmy have been able to redesign that board many, many times now, but keep it with this same feeling and vibe underfoot.
Props to Jimmy. He's the greatest shaper in wakeboarding, and he always has these, sometimes crazy ideas. And he approached me about making this board that is an all wood core.
We knew we had to do some changes. The board had to get thinner because it was going to be heavier. We ended up with a much more responsive, much livelier, predictable flex. And the all-wood board just added amazing durability and became the benchmark for every single park board we made from that moment on.
It was such a cool process of working on the prototypes, and Jimmy sending me different models, not telling me what the differences were, where he just changed the glass layup and whatever. That was a fun process, really developing this new board that is still based on the same, but taking it just a little further. Oh, that was a funny, actually, wait till the end. Hitting this, front 3 out, and now I'm hitting in there, and fully, it was actually pretty painful. Camden Lock, I think Scotty Broom maybe, and those guys have hit it way before me. And yeah, I could just session it. People weren't even bothering, and then we got the switchback lip on this edge. Yeah, I was pumped. I was pumped on that one. Cologne flooded, and I was really pumped on that piece. It was beautifully shot. We had an Ari for that second angle, so some super slow-mo nice shots, but it was so cold. It was actually snowing in that clip. Yeah, that's why I was so sick. Endless rail. I worked on the graphics on my boards for many of those years until I asked Nana to do it. It was really special having her on the board, and actually fearing in the beginning it would, loosen my connection to the board. It actually deepened it because, now I had my wife draw the artwork that was actually maybe even better than any that I had drawn before,
You could get lost in the details of Nana's work. You could also just appreciate how, through this continued collaboration with her, this board really is not just a great shape, but also always a canvas filled with art.
Nico was pushing us to make anything we could do to make the whole process of making the board more sustainable. And what I needed to have Nico appreciate is that his board didn't exist in a vacuum. Any idea he's trying to push us in that regard is going to ultimately affect every board we make. Thing was, these are really good ideas, but it's a radical thing to completely change the resin system in an entire factory. It's a radical thing to rethink how you're going to power a factory. And because he never let up and we kept pushing, to this day now, every board we make, aside from being 100% wood core, which started with the Peak, now everything's made with an eco-based resin. Everything uses a water-based ink if they're screen printing. And then most importantly, the whole place is powered by solar energy, completely off the grid, actually producing so much power we put it back into the grid. And to have an athlete that just doesn't want to just make a killer board for himself, but maybe actually make boards that they're good for the whole planet, I mean, that is a peak experience.
By this time, we're running the board for more than 10 years already, right? Like, that's crazy already. But like looking at the numbers also, like you could see obviously there was a decline. It wasn't where the peak was the only good park board. Just the line got bigger. And to be fair, the board didn't continue to develop as much as maybe it should have. And then Jimmy approached me, okay, Nico, I know like you love your board how it is. Maybe we're not gonna change the bottom, but
why not create a completely new top? And what we came up with is this 3D deck.
And the quest he was on was to take away as much material as possible to make it lighter, flexier, while still being super stable, this board that, you know, almost never breaks. And I think we accomplished that. That brings us to now, 15 years of the peak. And yeah, Joe, honestly, man, couldn't say thank you to this guy enough.
To be able to sit with Nico on the computer and just kind of bouncing ideas off of him, showing him illustrations how his wife's art can work into the composition of a board, and seeing him then come back and tell me like, oh, what if we do it this way? Or what if we change it and rotate it that way? Or can we see this in this color? And like the way that he collaborates is something that like not a lot of people can work with. Like it's a special thing that he kind of has the eye for design and what looks good.
Taking the artwork, putting in the colors, taking all the bits and pieces that we provided, like sketched logos and whatever, and created a board out of this. And he did such an amazing job of, you know, once again taking down his artwork and creating a graphic that I'm so pumped on, just after we have had an amazing year of showing that the space frame technology, which actually worked and improved the board a lot, a new version of the Peak to grow it into something that once again has become a really nice board, and man, just gets me pumped. This is the actual notebook I had for notes from Thailand. So cool. Yeah, here's the sketch of the board. And we ended the film with me flicking through all these empty pages, right? It's been a journey. I filled those empty pages, not just with this notebook, I mean, plenty more. And that just leaves me with one question. What are you filling your pages with?
When I'm not around, I'll sing it to you, to your big car stereo. My great-great-great-grandson, catching a flight all over the globe, but this dressing room is all I know. It's all I know.